So you want some notes from the underground, eh? I'll give you notes from the underground. A one, a two, a skiddly diddly do. Dude, they're talking about the book, not the album. Oh. First big piece of news, new camera. Second, rest in peace to the power shot. It served me well. I hope the picture and lighting here is good today. This is totally new. I've never had a DSLR before, and the main lighting that I use totally burnt out before I was ready to film this. I tried to get new bulbs, and apparently it takes a little more than a novice to do it for some reason, so it's gonna be a little weird today, but I think it really fits in with the theme. New camera, new lighting, an entire new era for Brian's book Bastion. Even if this first video of the new era is a little bit of a test, I hope it turns out well. But forgetting all of that, let's finally redeem ourselves from last week.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows, only time.
I finally finished Notes from the Underground by Dostoevsky. Thank God. Now let me just say right off the bat that this was really my first iffy book of the year from a narrative standpoint, but that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it, and hear me out on this one. Notes from Underground is split into two sections, the first one being where the narrator, this unnamed underground man, is actually underground, and the first section is more waxing philosophical, and if you follow this channel for any amount of time, you know that even if it's just an amateur analysis of it, I really do enjoy philosophy, and the fact that it was philosophy from a very specific time and place, Russia in the mid-1800s, it really added a lot of enjoyment from that sense there. But in the second part, it starts to get into more of this narrative story with the underground man, and I just really didn't like him as a character. He's just so negative the whole time. Every single time he gets to meet a new person or experiences a new thing, he maybe will flip back and forth on how he feels about that particular person or thing, but he almost always in the end goes to pretty much a hatred for everything that he comes across. And I understand why that's necessary for this story. He touches on a lot of subjects in a shifting Russian society that he wants to analyze it from a standpoint that's not super idealistic like society had been. He wanted to kind of look at what Russian society was moving into, and some of that was pretty scary. And just to stop any of you Underground Man fans from berating me here, nice rhyme, it's not that he was an incredibly terrible character. I just think that his best qualities specifically were when Dostoevsky himself shined through the underground man, and it was very intentional. It's just, Dostoevsky himself didn't seem like he was this wholly negative person. I think that this was just a vessel for him to air out a lot of his philosophical ideas and his analyzation of society. But when it comes back to the character himself, this constant negativity can really start to weigh on you as you read through the book. But those glimpses of Dostoevsky were just amazing. There was, such an interesting shift in society at the time. A lot of the industrialization of Russia was going on around this time, and it was very difficult for people to kind of see how that would factor into their lives. And I think that him using this character to kind of explain those ideas was pretty brilliant and groundbreaking for its time. Now, one of the main points that gets talked about with this society is with this industrialization, it is starting to make a lot of what the people of the society do every day irrelevant. And so a lot of the thought processes in here were trying to come to grips with where man's place would be in this society. And because everything was getting so automated, it started to leave time for other things like thinking about humanity itself and the ideals that it holds. And, there's a lot of boredom involved too. And so in the argument of the underground man, a lot of this thinking and suffering was kind of a compensation for this lack of activity because of all of the advances in technology and machinery that was really shaking the foundation of society as everybody knew it. Now, the Underground Man really does think that he is an intelligent individual, and he for sure lets you know throughout the entire story, because these really are notes from the Underground. He's writing them to a reader, nobody in particular, but just anybody that happens to be reading. And he points out that with this intelligence, though a lot of us would see intelligence as a very positive thing, he really starts to make it more of a negative connotation, in the sense that because he's thinking so much, he doesn't have a lot of this narrow-mindedness that he believes a lot of successful people have. He thinks that him thinking about everything that's going on in society starts to almost paralyze him, because he analyzes all the decisions that he has to make. He analyzes what impact they'll have on society as a whole. It's just a lot of this thought process starts to weigh on him over time. And he specifically brings up that comparison with the narrow-minded individuals of society, comparing them to, I believe it was a bull, that they can just charge forward, and if a wall comes up, they know when to stop. And they can just keep charging until they hit these walls and reach a lot of goals just by that alone. But then he compares himself and intelligent people in general to mice, where the wall isn't necessarily a incredibly important barrier, and they can find ways around it, and there's just so much more to it than run till you hit the wall. So you could see how this particular brand of thinking really could start to be a negative thing for you as an individual. It kind of becomes a suffocating presence for the Underground Man, and in fact, that's what ultimately leads him underground in the end, because he doesn't want to be a part of a society that he has to continue to think about and worry about and wonder what direction they're going in. Plus, he just generally spites them anyway. But that's all he's left with when he is underground. He doesn't have any of these other connections to society, and so he generally loves his intelligence because he does get to think about it, but then when he thinks about it too much, realizes how much he hates it. He loves and hates his intelligence, just like he goes through this process with just about every subject matter that he touches. He loves it, thinks about it, then hates it. And I think that it is palpable that there is this difference with Dostoevsky himself. In fact, he does reference himself in a little asterisk at the beginning of the book, where he says that he's a fictional writer along with this fictional underground man, but he does insert himself in some way into this story. And I think a lot of the ideas, when the underground man starts to think of things in a more positive sense, a lot of Dostoevsky comes through there. And there's just a lot of moments like that where you can just see that, as I mentioned earlier, the underground man really is just a vessel for him to get his ideas out there. And I think that his particular contributions are really what drives the story along and what really allowed me to finish the book in the end, especially because a lot of them are pretty funny. Specifically, he mentions certain works through the underground man where he kind of brings up a lot of these ideas and then tears them down, essentially saying, that's pretty stupid. And the thing was, it was kind of a veiled insult, because within this copy at least, there were a lot of endnotes where anytime there were any outside works referenced, you could just go to the end, and a lot of the endnotes would be, well, this particular piece came out fairly close to the time that this novel came out, and so it's also his way to kind of slyly critique everything else that's going on around him. And again, it's just a general, like, that's pretty dumb. And in fact, in the back, they do mention that a lot of these pieces that are mentioned, when they do have these insults with them, they almost always say that they were intellectual rivals to Dostoevsky. And so it's just pretty great that throughout the book he just keeps throwing in these jabs here and there. And that just leads to why it was a good read in the end, even though the Underground Man was a frustrating character because of his negativity. It was really the first of its kind to address a lot of these societal problems as they were happening, particularly alienation because of the industrialization of the country. A lot of these people felt like they didn't have a place anymore, and they were just kind of left alone with their thoughts. And so the fact that there was an outlet here in this novel really makes it pretty revolutionary, and a lot of these ideas get carried on with other novels that I can think about. And so just in that fact alone, that this was such a historical piece, it made it pretty enjoyable to see where some of these ideas might have originated from. And I also did a little bit of research on the side, and I think that this might have helped the book, but there was some counts of Dostoevsky saying, maybe they were interviews or maybe they were letters, I can't remember, but he was saying that part of the book was censored because of whatever was going on in society at the time, and they might have actually cut out central parts of the book that would have offered more hope. Like one of them that he particularly mentioned was the need for religion and faith, how that could almost fill that gap in the life of anybody in the society where they're not just brewing on this negativity all the time. There is actually something that can fill that gap for them in the end. And also, just because this was a really early analyzation of psychological subjects, this was before Freud, if I'm correct here, and that's a central theme of the book, where the Underground Man is grappling with these internal thoughts that he has, where, you know, he loves something because of these reasons, he hates something because of these reasons, and his experiences in the past really shape why he feels the way he does. And that's kind of where the second part becomes more important. You kind of see what events led him to this negativity. But like I said, it does become overbearing, and so it can kind of become a slog, but those analyzations are fantastic, and for those alone, it's definitely worth reading. And speaking of analyzing oneself, I'm going to end it here. I think I'm running out of memory. Again, I'm just getting used to this camera, but next week is the second quarter review. I can't believe I'm already halfway done with the year, and honestly pretty ahead of the reading goal that I set at the beginning, and so that'll be pretty cool. I think there'll be a potential change of scenery. I know people have given me comments here and there that, oh, you're not sitting in front of a bookshelf or whatever else like that, so maybe there'll be a change of scenery. I'll definitely try and experiment with the new technology that I have, but hopefully this was a good test run. We'll see after the fact. If this cut makes it in, then it probably went pretty well. But that's it for now. I hope this was a good test run. We'll see how it goes, but I hope I'll catch you next week for the second quarter review. See you then.